Look, I need to tell you about Admiral Kira Volkov, not the legend they sing about now. The woman, the one I voted against. My name is Theron Calvex, fourth-hand ambassador of the Galactic Council, and I watched her walk into our chamber, knowing we would destroy her application. She came anyway. That should have told me everything. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start with the moment I first saw her. The council chamber exists in a state of perpetual twilight, a vast sphere where light bends according to the needs of 847 different species. The air itself hums with translation matrices, each frequency calibrated to ensure every word reaches every ear in a form that makes sense. It's beautiful, overwhelming, a cathedral to civilization itself. I stood at my designated position, all four of my hands clasped behind my back in the formal posture of diplomatic contemplation. My skin had settled into a comfortable shade of ocean blue, the color of calm confidence. Around me, representatives from across the galaxy floated, perched or stood according to their physiology. The insectoid creche clicked their mandibles in quiet conversation. The gaseous Volm drifted in their containment spheres. Commander Zarketh, with his crimson scales gleaming under the ambient light, occupied the military section with predatory stillness. At the center of it all, High Chancellor Loomis presided from a throne of pure light, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's glow into dancing rainbows. The human delegation approaches. The AI announced its voice like wind chimes in a summer breeze. The massive doors opened. 3 figures entered, and the entire chamber seemed to hold its breath. They walked upright on 2 legs, an evolutionary choice that still struck me as precarious. Most civilized species had evolved past such instability, but these humans moved with the kind of confidence that made their posture seem less like a vulnerability and more like a challenge to gravity itself. The woman in front stood perhaps 1.7 meters tall, not imposing by most standards. I've encountered species that tower 3 meters. But something about the way she carried herself made the space around her feel smaller. Her hair was white, stark white, like the ice caps of my homeworld, but with streaks of black running through it like cracks in frozen stone. Her eyes, even from this distance, were the color of winter steel, and across her left cheek, visible even under the chamber's flattering light, ran a scar, a thin line of tissue that looked decades old, but somehow recent in the way it caught the light. Admiral Kira Volkov. I'd read her file. 52 standard years old. Fleet Commander of the United Earth Federation. Born on Mars Colony 7. The file didn't mention the scar. Behind her walked 2 men. Dr. Elias Thorne, 45, wearing glasses made of some kind of metallic frame, his eyes constantly scanning the chamber with scientific curiosity. And Colonel Ryder Kane, 38, whose posture screamed military precision with every step. They wore simple black uniforms, no decorations, no ornate badges of office like the rest of us. Just matte black fabric that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. In a chamber designed to showcase the splendor of galactic civilization, they looked like void's dark stars around which attention inevitably gravitated. My skin shifted, blue to green, a subtle change, uncertainty creeping in. Kira Volkov stopped at the central platform. She didn't bow, didn't gesture in the traditional sign of supplication. She simply looked up at Chancellor Loomis and waited. Admiral Volkov, Loomis said, his voice resonating through the chamber like light through crystal. You come before this council to petition for humanity's membership. We have reviewed your species' history. We find it troubling. I watched her face. Watched for the micro-expressions my training had taught me to identify. Fear, anger, desperation. I saw none of them. Troubling how Chancellor... Her voice carried clearly no amplification needed. It had a quality to it, low and steady like distant thunder before a storm. "Your world has seen constant warfare," Loomis continued. "Environmental destruction, social upheaval. Your species has developed weapons capable of destroying entire planets. Your industrial capacity could strip mine systems bare within decades. What assurance can you give us that humanity will not bring this chaos to the galaxy?" Kira Volkov nodded slowly, as if she'd expected this exact question, as if she'd prepared for it her entire life. "Chancellor, members of the Council," she began, "I won't lie to you. Our history is violent. We've fought wars that killed millions. We've poisoned our own atmosphere. We've made mistakes that nearly destroyed us." My skin brightened slightly. At least she was honest. "But we learned," she continued. "Every challenge our world threw at us, we adapted. Every crisis we faced, we emerged stronger. Earth is classified as a Class 7 death world by your standards. The gravity alone would crush most species here. The atmospheric composition is toxic to 70% of known life forms. Our weather patterns generate storms that could power entire cities." She paused, and I swear I saw the ghost of a smile cross her face. "Earth taught us to read patterns others miss, to see threats before they arrive, to prepare for dangers that civilized species don't even consider possible." I made a note of that phrase. Patterns others miss. It seemed important, though I didn't know why yet. "Pretty words," Commander Zarketh called out, his yellow eyes fixed on the human delegation. "But words are cheap. Your species is the product of evolutionary pressure that would kill most civilized beings. You've weaponized everything from splitting atoms to manipulating gravity. Your entertainment glorifies violence and conquest." He stood, his full 2.3 meters of scaled muscle, imposing in a way that made several nearby representatives shift nervously. "You are apex predators pretending to be civilized," Zarketh said. "And I have the data to prove it." A holographic display materialized in the chamber's center. Numbers scrolled past, damning in their precision. "Human vessels." Zarketh read, his voice dripping with contempt. "Power output 2.4 petawatts versus our standard 0.7. Weapon signatures showing triple-layer physics violations. Ship-to-ship combat capability exceeding any known civilization by a factor of 12. He turned to face Kira directly. "When you encounter a real threat, Admiral, when you face something that challenges your supremacy, you'll panic. You'll unleash that violence, and we'll all pay the price." The chamber erupted in murmurs. I felt my skin darkening, shifting toward orange, the color of concern. Colonel Kane stepped forward, his voice calm and measured. "Commander Zarketh, with respect, every species in this chamber possesses planet-killing technology. The difference is that we've never used ours against another species." "Because you had no other targets," Zarketh shot back. "What happens when you do?" And then Kira Volkov did something I'll never forget. She smiled. Not a warm smile, not a friendly smile, a cold, knowing smile that made my skin flash through 3 colors in rapid succession. "Commander," she said quietly, "when the dark comes, you'll need people who were born in it." Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Chancellor Loomis leaned forward, his crystalline form pulsing with what I'd learned to recognize as diplomatic concern. "Is that a threat, Admiral?" "No, Chancellor." Kira's expression didn't change. "It's a fact. One you might want to remember. The vote happened electronically. Each of us registered our decision through our personal terminals, the results aggregated by the AI and displayed for all to see." I stared at my screen. 2 options glowed before me. Accept humanity. Reject humanity. I thought about the data, the weapons, the history of violence. The cold certainty in Kira Volkov's eyes when she talked about darkness. My hand, my primary right hand, moved to select reject. I told myself it was the rational choice, the safe choice, the choice that protected everything we'd built. My skin had turned a deep navy blue, the color of guilt I wouldn't acknowledge for another 3 hours. The results appeared on the main display. In favor, 923 against 1,547, abstaining 112. The application for human membership in the Galactic Council has been rejected, Chancellor Loomis announced. However, Earth is welcome to maintain observer status and may reapply for full membership in 50 standard years. I watched Kira Volkov's face, waited for the anger, the disappointment, the protests. She simply nodded. "We understand the Council's decision and respect it," she said, her voice steady as stone. Then she looked around the chamber, her grey eyes meeting as many representatives as they could. "But I want you to remember this moment," she continued. "When the darkness comes, and it will come, you'll need people born to fight it. We came here offering partnership. We'll leave offering protection anyway." She turned to go, her 2 companions falling into step beside her. But at the doorway she stopped, looked back. "Earth taught us one final lesson, Chancellor. The strong protect the weak, not for glory, not for reward, because it's right. You'll understand soon enough." The doors closed behind them. I should have felt relief, satisfaction. The dangerous Deathworlders had been kept at bay. The galaxy was safe. Instead, my skin had shifted to a color I rarely displayed in public. Deep indigo, the color of profound unease. 3 minutes later, the alarms began. The sound started as a low pulse, then escalated to a shriek that made every species in the chamber react according to their biology. The Kresh's mandibles locked. The Volm's containment spheres rippled. My skin flashed through the entire spectrum of panic, settling on a violent orange-red I'd never achieved before. Zarketh's tactical officer, a young reptilian named Skrell, materialized on every screen in the chamber simultaneously. "Commander?" Skrell's voice cracked with stress. "We're receiving emergency signals from the outer rim. Multiple colonies have gone silent." "Define multiple," Zarketh demanded. 23 confirmed, sir. Reconnaissance drones are detecting. Commander, the colonies aren't just silent. They're gone. Chancellor Loomis stood his crystalline form pulsing with rapid-fire light. "Gone, explain." "Molecular disintegration, Chancellor. We're reading empty space where colonies used to be. No survivors, no wreckage, just nothing." The chamber dissolved into chaos. 847 species all shouting at once in 847 different ways. I stood frozen, my skin cycling through colors so fast I probably looked like a malfunctioning display screen. 23 colonies. Gone. In the time it took us to vote to reject the humans to congratulate ourselves on our caution, my terminal chimed. A priority message from my assistant. Urgent human delegation has not departed. Still in Docking Bay 7. Admiral Volkov requests immediate communication. I looked at Chancellor Loomis, who nodded, his usual calm shattered. The screen activated. Kira Volkov's face appeared, and I noticed something I'd missed before. She looked tired. Not just physically tired, but tired in the way that comes from carrying something heavy for too long. "Chancellor," she said, "we're aware of the situation." "How could you possibly?" Zarketh started. "We detected them 72 hours ago." Kira interrupted, her voice flat. "We tried to warn you. It was in our presentation, slide 47. The part about reading patterns others miss." My skin went completely pale, almost translucent. The color of shock so profound, my body didn't know how to process it. "You knew," I heard myself say. "You knew and you didn't. Didn't what Ambassador Calvex." Kira's eyes found mine through the screen, and I felt like she could see straight through me. "We tried. You weren't listening. You were too busy being afraid of us to hear what we were actually saying." "What are they?" Chancellor Loomis asked quietly. "We call them harvesters." Dr. Thorne spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the careful precision of a scientist. "Extragalactic entities. They consume everything useful and leave nothing behind. We've been monitoring them for 100 standard years. 100 years. While we built our civilization, our trade networks, our comfortable assumption that the galaxy was fundamentally safe, the humans had been watching something in the dark. 60 years ago," Kira continued, "they consumed the Andromeda Galaxy, 4 billion star systems reduced to cosmic dust in less than a decade. We tracked their migration path. This galaxy is directly in their route." The chamber had gone silent again, but it was a different silence than before. This was the silence of species confronting their own extinction. "Why didn't you tell us?" someone shouted from the crowd. 25 years ago, we could have prepared." Kira's expression shifted. For the first time since entering the chamber, I saw something other than professional composure. I saw pain. "We tried, 25 years ago. I was there." She touched the scar on her face, a gesture so quick I almost missed it. "I was a junior officer, 27 years old. I stood in a smaller chamber than this one and presented the evidence we'd gathered. Long-range sensor data, gravitational anomalies, energy signatures that matched nothing in known space." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. "They laughed, called us paranoid deathworlders, said humans saw threats everywhere because our violent nature made us unable to trust the universe." The official council response was 3 lines long. "Request denied. Evidence insufficient. Do not contact this council again regarding unfounded conspiracy theories." My skin had gone completely grey, the colour of shame so deep it had no other expression. "So we went back to Earth," Kira said, her voice hardening. "And we made a decision. We would protect you whether you wanted it or not, because that's what Earth taught us. The strong protect the weak, not for gratitude, not for membership, because someone has to." She stood up and I could see behind her now, the bridge of a ship, but not the simple transport vessel we'd assumed they'd arrived on. This was a military command center screens displaying tactical information officers moving with urgent efficiency. 72 hours ago," Kira continued, "our sentinel stations on the galactic rim detected the Harvester Vanguard. 120,000 vessels moving at 0.7 light speed toward your outer rim colonies. We attempted to contact you. Our messages were flagged as spam because we don't have diplomatic credentials." She smiled again, that cold smile that made me understand why Earth was classified as a death world. Not because of gravity or atmosphere, because it produced people like her. "So we came in person. We asked for membership knowing you'd refuse, because we needed to be in position when the attack began. We needed to be here inside your defensive perimeter when you finally understood what was coming." "Admiral Volkov," Chancellor Loomis said, and for the first time since I'd known him, I heard uncertainty in his voice. "What do you need from us?" "Nothing, Chancellor. We need nothing from you, but I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you." She leaned closer to the screen and I saw it then, in her eyes. The weight she'd been carrying wasn't just knowledge of the threat. It was something heavier, something that had carved that scar into her face and turned her hair white decades too early. 35 years ago, she said quietly. I was 17 years old, living on Mars Colony 7 with my father. He was an engineer, kept the atmospheric processes running. He used to say someone had to keep watch while others slept safely. Her hand went to her scar again. A solar storm hit. Class 9, something that happens once every century. The processors failed. My father went outside to manually restart them. I watched through the observation window as the radiation hit him. Watched him keep working even as his suit's integrity failed. He got the processors online, saved 3,000 colonists. By the time rescue came, she didn't finish. Didn't need to. I learned something that day, Ambassador Calvex. I learned that waiting for permission to help people gets them killed. I learned that sometimes you have to act even when the people you're saving don't want you there. I learned that being right doesn't matter if everyone's dead. I couldn't speak. My skin had cycled through every color in my species' emotional spectrum and settled on something I'd never displayed before. A deep, profound purple that had no name because we rarely felt the emotion it represented. Respect mixed with terror. The Vanguard will reach your inhabited systems in 14 hours, Kira said, her voice returning to military efficiency. The main fleet is 7 hours behind them, 1.4 million vessels. Your entire combined defensive fleet numbers 15,000 ships. She let that sink in. We're not asking for your help, Chancellor. We're telling you to evacuate every civilian you can from the Outer Rim territories. Get them away from the colonies. We'll buy you time. How many ships do you have? Zarketh demanded. Kira's smile returned, and this time there was something in it that made my skin flash warning colors I couldn't control. Enough, Commander. You called us apex predators. You were right. But you missed the most important part. We're apex predators who chose to become guardians. You're about to see the difference. The screen went dark. I stood in the council chamber surrounded by the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever produced, and realized we'd just made the most catastrophic mistake in our history. We'd rejected the only people who could save us. And they were going to save us anyway. The evacuation began immediately, though calling it organized would be generous. Panic spread through the Council's communication networks like a virus. 847 species, each with their own protocols, their own hierarchies, their own inability to comprehend what was coming. I volunteered to serve as liaison with the human fleet. Someone had to. And I needed to see this with my own eyes. Needed to understand what we'd rejected. The shuttle ride to their flagship took 12 minutes. 12 minutes during which I watched my homeworld's news feeds descend into chaos. 12 minutes where my skin couldn't decide between shame grey and terror orange, so it settled on a nauseating combination of both. The UEF Sentinel hung in space like a shard of night itself, where council vessels curved gracefully, reflecting light in aesthetically pleasing ways. The Sentinel was all angles and purpose. Matte black armor plating. Weapon emplacements that didn't even try to be subtle. It looked less like a ship and more like a declaration of intent. The docking bay doors opened, and I stepped into a world I didn't understand. Everything was efficient. No decorative panels, no artistic flourishes. Just grey, metal, harsh lighting, and crew members moving with the kind of precision that comes from endless drilling. They wore the same black uniforms as their admiral. No rank insignia visible to my eyes, yet everyone seemed to know exactly where they belonged in the hierarchy. A young woman couldn't have been more than 25 standard years met me at the airlock. Lieutenant Sarah Morrison, according to her name patch. Ambassador Calvex. She said, her tone respectful but hurried. Admiral Volkov is expecting you on the command deck. Please follow me. We walked through corridors that thrummed with contained energy. I could feel it through the deck plates. A vibration that suggested the ship's power systems were operating at levels far beyond what Council engineers would consider safe. "How long have you served under Admiral Volkov?" I asked, more to fill the silence than from genuine curiosity. Lieutenant Morrison glanced back at me, and I saw something in her eyes. Loyalty so fierce it bordered on religious devotion. 7 years, sir. She pulled me out of the wreckage of the Thermopylae during the Proxima incident. I was the only survivor. She spent 18 hours in a damaged EVA suit, cutting through hull plating to reach me. Morrison's pace never slowed. The doctors said she had radiation poisoning that should have killed her. She didn't care. Said she doesn't leave her people behind. My skin shifted to a softer blue, the color of understanding beginning to dawn. The command deck was controlled chaos. Holographic displays floated in three-dimensional space, showing tactical information I could barely pass. Officers called out status reports in clipped, efficient phrases. And in the center of it all, standing before the largest display, was Admiral Kira Volkov. She'd removed her formal jacket. Underneath, she wore a simple black shirt with rolled sleeves. I could see scars on her forearms now. Burns, mostly. The kind you get from working with damaged systems in emergency situations. Her white hair was pulled back in a tight braid. She was speaking quietly with Dr. Thorne and Colonel Kane when I approached. All three turned to face me. "Ambassador," Kira said, and I noticed the fatigue in her voice. How long had she been awake? "Thank you for coming. We'll need Council assistance with the evacuation." "Of course, Admiral. Anything you need." I hesitated. I wanted to apologize for the vote, for not listening. Kira's expression softened just slightly. "We're past that now, Ambassador. Lives first, politics later, always." She turned back to the display. "Elias, show him what we're seeing." Dr. Thorne manipulated the holographic controls with practiced ease. The display zoomed out, showing the entire star system and beyond. Red contacts appeared, hundreds of them, moving in precise formation toward the inhabited inner systems. "The Vanguard," Thorne explained, his voice carrying that academic precision. 120,000 harvester vessels. Current velocity 0.7 light speed and accelerating. Energy signatures match biomechanical propulsion systems. Hull composition approximately 89% organic matter with metallic reinforcement. They regenerate damage at roughly 340 kilograms per hour. I stared at the numbers. They heal themselves. Faster than most weapons can damage them, Thorne confirmed. Traditional energy weapons are essentially useless. They absorb anything below 10 to the 18th joules and convert it to mass for repairs. Then how do you fight them? Kira smiled, and I was starting to recognize the different kinds of smiles she had. This one was predatory, the smile of someone who'd studied the enemy until she knew them better than they knew themselves. "You don't fight them with energy, Ambassador. You fight them with physics." She touched a control and the display changed. Now it showed human vessels, 50 of them arranged in what looked like a defensive formation around the system's outer edge. 50 ships, Zarketh's voice came through the communication channel. He'd patched into our feed. "Against 120,000. Admiral, this is suicide." "Commander," Kira said patiently, "you're thinking in terms of ship-to-ship combat. We're thinking in terms of system-wide warfare." "There's a difference. I don't see how 50 ships..." "Watch." Kira issued a command I didn't catch, and everything changed. The 50 human vessels began to transform. Armor plates slid away, internal structures reconfigured, and from within each dreadnought, like seeds from a pod, smaller vessels emerged. Thousands of them, tens of thousands. Each of our capital ships. Colonel Kane explained, his voice carrying military pride, is actually a carrier and mobile fabrication facility. What you're seeing is the deployment of our fighter wings. The numbers on the display climbed. 10,000 fighters, 50,000, 100,000. They kept coming. My skin flashed through colors so fast, I'm sure I looked like a malfunctioning light display. I heard myself making a sound somewhere between a gasp and a laugh. The kind of noise someone makes when they realize they've fundamentally misunderstood reality. 2.5 million fighter craft, Doctor, Thorne said calmly, as if he were discussing the weather. Each equipped with modular weapon systems, quantum communication networks, and adaptive AI coordination protocols. You've been hiding an armada, I whispered. We've been watching the darkness, Kira corrected, and building what we'd need when it finally arrived. You see 50 ships. I see 50 battle groups. That's how Deathworlders think, Ambassador. We plan for the worst, always. The fighters spread out across the system like a living thing, forming patterns that hurt my eyes to follow. Three-dimensional formations that seemed to defy tactical logic. Admiral, one of the bridge officers called out. Harvester Vanguard has entered weapon range. Time to contact 4 minutes. Kira's expression hardened. She touched the scar on her face, a gesture I was learning meant she was about to make a difficult decision. All ships, this is Volkov. You know what we're fighting for. 4 billion souls sleeping safely because we're standing watch. The Harvesters don't negotiate. Don't take prisoners. Don't show mercy. So neither will we. She paused, and I saw her jaw clench. For those we lost. For those we'll save. Execute engagement protocol Cerberus. Authorization, Volkov Omega Black. The response came from 2.5 million voices perfectly synchronized through their quantum network. Acknowledged. I watched the tactical display as the first contact was made. Watched as Harvester ships, each one the size of a council cruiser, accelerated toward the human fighters. Then Kira's fleet opened fire, and I understood why Earth was a death world. The weapons they deployed weren't like anything in Council arsenals. A human ship, barely larger than a personal shuttle, fired what Thorne called a gravity lance. The beam that emerged was visible even in the vacuum of space, a lance of impossible force that struck a Harvester vessel and simply erased it from existence. Not destroyed, not blown apart. Erased as if it had never been. Gravity lance, Thorne narrated calmly. We collapse a space-time bubble approximately 10 to the negative 35th meters in diameter, then direct the resulting energy release at the target. Output 10 to the 24th watts for 0.003 seconds. The Harvesters can't absorb it because we're not attacking their hull. We're attacking the fabric of reality where their hull happens to be. More human fighters engaged. I watched weapons I had no names for tear through the Harvester Vanguard. Missiles that created localized singularities. Kinetic projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed. Energy beams that phased through dimensional space to bypass shields entirely. But what truly stunned me was the coordination. The human fleet moved like a single organism. Fighters would group together their modular systems, linking to create larger weapon platforms. They'd fire devastating salvos, then separate and scatter before the Harvesters could target them effectively. The quantum network made them all one mind with 2.5 million bodies. They're adapting to our tactics. Kane observed, his eyes scanning tactical readouts. Reaction time improving by 0.3 seconds per engagement. Expected, Kira replied. Continue rotation pattern Delta. Don't let them predict our movements. The battle raged for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The display showed Harvester contacts winking out one by one. 10,000 destroyed, 20,000. 50,000. My skin had settled into a bright gold color. Hope. Actual, genuine hope. We were winning. Then the alarms started screaming. "Admiral!" The tactical officer's voice cracked. "The remaining harvesters are changing formation. Oh gods, they're evolving!" I watched in horror as the harvester ships began to shift. Their biomechanical hulls rippled, restructured, transformed. When the gravity lances struck them now, the ships absorbed the energy, used it to build new armor configurations. "They're adapting to our weapons," Thorne said, his academic calm finally showing cracks. "Faster than predicted. They're learning from each strike." "Switch to kinetic bombardment," Kira ordered. "Maximum dispersion. Don't give them time to adapt to any single weapon type." The human fleet adjusted, but I could see it now. The harvesters were learning. Every destroyed ship shared its final moments with the collective. Every failed defense taught them something new. The casualty count started climbing on the human side. 1 fighter destroyed. 10, 50. "Admiral UEF Phoenix is taking critical damage," someone reported. "Hull breaches across multiple sections. They're requesting emergency evacuation." Kira's face went completely still. "Denied. They're too deep in enemy formation. Evacuation would mean losing more ships." "Ma'am, there are 3,000 personnel on Phoenix." "I know." Her voice was quiet. "Terrible. I know exactly how many." I watched her pull up the Phoenix's crew manifest on her personal display. Watched her eyes scan down the list of names. 3,000 names. 3,000 people about to die. "Captain Morris," Kira spoke into the communication channel. "It's been an honor serving with you." The response came back, audio only broken by static. "The honor was ours, Admiral. Give them hell for us." The Phoenix's icon on the tactical display flared bright, then went dark. 3,000 lives. Gone. Kira stood absolutely motionless for 3 seconds. Then she touched her scar, and when she looked up, her eyes had gone cold in a way that made my skin flash warning colors. "All ships," she said, her voice carrying across every channel. "That's the price. That's what they take from us. Every person on Phoenix had families, friends, people waiting for them to come home. The harvesters don't care. They'll consume everything if we let them." She leaned over the tactical display. "So we don't let them. Kane, execute dispersal pattern Omega. I want every fighter equipped with quantum disruptors. We're going to kill every single one of them." The battle intensified. The humans fought with a fury I'd never witnessed, and slowly, painfully, the Harvester vanguard began to fall back. 97,000 destroyed. The remaining 23,000 retreated toward the outer system, pursued by human fighters who showed no mercy. "Pursuit successful," Kane reported. "Remaining hostiles eliminated. System secure." The command deck erupted in subdued acknowledgement. No cheering, no celebration, just grim satisfaction at a job completed. Kira pulled up the casualty report. I watched her read it. Every name. All 47,000 of them. Her jaw clenched tighter with each scroll. 47,000, she said quietly. 47,000 people who won't go home. She looked at me then, and I saw something in her eyes I'll never forget. It wasn't triumph, it wasn't relief. It was the weight of command, the burden of being the one who has to decide who lives and who dies. The terrible mathematics of war, where victory is measured in how many you saved versus how many you lost. "Ambassador," she said, "we've bought you 18 hours. Use them. Evacuate everyone you can from the Outer Rim territories." "Admiral, I don't know how to thank." "Don't." Her voice was sharp. Thank me when this is over, if we're still alive. Doctor. Thorne approached, his expression grim. Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting massive gravitational distortions in deep space, the main fleet. How many? Kira asked, though I could tell from her tone she already knew. 1.4 million vessels, arrival time 14 hours. The number hit me like a physical blow. 1.4 million. We'd barely survived against 120,000, and that was only because of human intervention. Chancellor Loomis is transmitting, though. The communications officer announced. Council is offering emergency membership. Unanimous vote. 2,959 to 0. Kira didn't even look at the transmission request. Tell the Chancellor I appreciate the gesture, but we'll discuss membership after the battle. Right now, I need to figure out how to stop 1.4 million hostiles with a fleet that just lost 47,000 people. She turned to Thorne and Kane. Gentlemen, we need options, because right now we don't have enough firepower to win this fight. We could execute Prometheus Protocol, Kane said quietly. The silence that followed was absolute. No, Kira said firmly. That's a last resort. We're not there yet. Admiral, Thorne began, if the mathematics are correct. I said no, Elias. We find another way. We always find another way. But I saw the fear in her eyes. For the first time since I'd met her, Admiral Kira Volkov looked genuinely afraid. Not for herself, for all of us. The next 14 hours passed in a strange state of suspended time. The Council evacuated 600 billion civilians from the Outer Rim. 600 billion lives pulled from the path of extinction because Admiral Kira Volkov and her fleet had bought us time we didn't deserve. I stayed aboard the Sentinel. I'm not sure why. Perhaps I needed to witness this. Perhaps I needed to understand what we'd rejected. Or perhaps I just couldn't bear the thought of being anywhere else when the darkness arrived. The command deck had transformed into something between a military headquarters and a funeral home. Officers worked with quiet efficiency, speaking in hushed tones, as if raising their voices might wake something terrible sleeping in the void. Kira had barely slept since the council vote. I could see it in the way she moved, the slight hesitation before each decision, the way her hand kept drifting to touch the scar on her face. But her eyes remained sharp, focused, calculating. I found her in a small observation room off the main deck. She stood before the massive viewport staring out at the stars, and for a moment she looked very small, very human, very alone. She was holding something. A photograph printed on actual paper, worn at the edges from years of handling. I couldn't help myself. My curiosity had always been my weakness. May I ask what that is, Admiral? She didn't turn around, but she didn't tell me to leave either. My father, Mars Colony 7. I was 17. She held up the photograph so I could see. A younger Kira Hare, still black, no scar on her face, standing beside a man in an engineer's uniform, both of them smiling like they had their whole lives ahead of them. I took this 3 hours before the solar storm hit. Her voice was barely above a whisper. 3 hours before I watched him die, keeping the atmospheric processes running. 3 hours before I learned that waiting for permission to act gets people killed. She carefully folded the photograph and placed it in her breast pocket right over her heart. If you're watching this, she said, and I realized she was recording a message, tell Earth their daughter kept watch to the end. Tell them some prices are worth paying. Tell them I remembered the lesson. She stopped the recording and finally turned to face me. In the dim light of the observation room, with stars reflected in her grey eyes, she looked both ancient and impossibly young. You should evacuate, Ambassador. Get on a council ship and head for the core systems. This isn't your fight. With respect, Admiral, you made it my fight when you decided to save us anyway. She smiled, and this time it was sad, genuine, human. I suppose I did. The proximity alarms shattered the moment. Both of us ran to the command deck where controlled chaos had erupted into something much worse. The main display showed them. 1.4 million harvester vessels emerging from hyperspace like a plague of locusts. They materialized in waves, each wave larger than the last, until they blotted out entire sections of the starfield. My skin went through every color in rapid succession and settled on translucent white, the color of fear so profound my body couldn't process it. All hands to battle stations. Kira's voice cut through the panic, steady as stone. This is not a drill. This is what we prepared for. This is why Earth made us strong. She stood at the center of the command deck and I watched her transform. The fatigue fell away. The moment of vulnerability vanished. What remained was the apex predator Zarketh had warned us about, focused entirely on protecting her pack. Elias Ryder, she called her senior officers to her side. They huddled around a smaller display, speaking in voices too low for me to hear, but I saw their faces, saw the argument happening in glances and gestures. Then I heard it. 2 words that made everyone on the bridge go silent. Prometheus Protocol. Dr. Thorne pulled up specifications on the main display. I watched numbers scroll past calculations that my translator struggled to pass. But I understood enough. Artificial supernova, triggered by synchronizing every human ship's reactor core into a cascading collapse. The resulting explosion would consume everything within 5 light hours, including the human fleet. It's the only way to guarantee we destroy them all, Colonel Kane said quietly. We position ourselves at the center of their formation. Trigger the collapse. Nothing survives. Not them, not us. Kira stared at the calculations for what felt like an eternity. When she spoke, her voice was hollow. What's the escape window? There isn't one, Thorne replied. The cascade takes 47 seconds from initiation to critical mass. Even at maximum acceleration, our ships would still be inside the detonation radius. So we're talking about a suicide mission. Yes, Admiral, but we'd save 4 billion lives in the inhabited inner systems. The mathematics are clear. I watched Kira's face, watched her do the terrible calculus that command requires. 2.5 million human personnel, the entire fleet, every ship, every life, for 4 billion others. No, she said firmly. There has to be another way. Admiral? Kane began. I said no, Ryder. We're not there yet. We find another option. We always find another option. But Dr. Thorne was shaking his head, his expression carrying something I couldn't quite identify. Resignation, determination. Actually, Admiral, there is another option, but you're not going to like it. He pulled up new calculations. Modified the Prometheus protocol specifications. Added a single variable that changed everything. Manual deployment of a quantum disruptor at the heart of the harvester formation. The disruptor can trigger a cascade through their quantum consciousness network, Thorne explained. They share information instantaneously across all vessels. If we can disrupt that network at the quantum level, the feedback will propagate through their entire fleet. They'd all shut down simultaneously. But it requires manual deployment, Kira said, and I heard the weight in her voice. Someone would need to go EVA, get close enough to their command cluster to deploy the device. They'd never make it back. No, Thorne agreed. They wouldn't. The silence stretched. Every officer on the bridge understood what this meant. Someone would have to volunteer to die. Not in battle, not in the chaos of combat where death comes quick and impersonal, but deliberately, walking into extinction with full knowledge and acceptance. I'll go, Kira said immediately. No, Thorne's voice was firm. You're needed here. The fleet can't coordinate without you. Your tactical command is what's keeping us alive. Elias, I'm volunteering, Admiral, and you're going to approve it, because you know I'm right. Kira's face went through a dozen emotions in the space of a heartbeat. Denial, anger, desperation, and finally terrible acceptance. "You're asking me to send you to die," she whispered. "I'm asking you to let me save everyone," Thorne corrected gently. "Admiral, you pulled me out of a dead-end research position 15 years ago. You believed in my work when no one else did. You gave me purpose. Let me complete it." He smiled, and it was the saddest thing I'd ever seen. "Someone needs to survive this to keep watch. That's you, Kira. That's always been you. I'm just the scientist who figured out how to make your impossible decision slightly less impossible." I watched Admiral Kira Volkov, the woman who'd stood against rejection, who'd faced down extinction-level threats, who'd lost 47,000 people and kept fighting break. Just for a moment. Just long enough for me to see the human beneath the Admiral. Then she straightened, touched her scar, and nodded. Approved. God help me, approved. The next hour was preparation. Thorne suited up in EVA gear while Kira coordinated the fleet's final assault. The plan was brutally simple. The human fighters would create a corridor through the Harvester formation. Thorne would fly an armored shuttle through that corridor to the command cluster, deploy the disruptor manually, and die. I found myself standing near the launch bay as Thorne prepared to depart. He noticed me, nodded in acknowledgement. "Ambassador, would you do something for me? Tell your people what happened here. Don't let them forget that humans died protecting them, not for glory, not for reward, because it was right." Before I could respond, Kira appeared. She'd come to say goodbye, and I felt like an intruder witnessing something too intimate for my eyes. "Elias," she began, but words failed her. "I know," he said quietly. "I know, Kira. Thank you for the last 15 years. They were the best of my life." She embraced him then. A brief, fierce hug that said everything words couldn't. When they separated, I saw tears on her face, the first I'd witnessed. "Go save them," Thorne said, touching her scar one final time. "That's what you do." The shuttle launched, and the final battle began. 2.5 million human fighters created a tunnel of destruction through the Harvester swarm. They died by the thousands, creating that passage, their ships exploding like brief candles in an infinite night. But the corridor held. Thorne's shuttle pushed through. I watched from the command deck as his life signs moved deeper into enemy formation. Watched as Harvester ships converged on his position. Watched as he broadcast his final message. "Disruptor deployed. Manual activation in 3, 2, 1. The tactical display went white. Every Harvester vessel, all 1.4 million of them, ceased functioning simultaneously. Their quantum consciousness network, the thing that made them unstoppable through shared evolution, became their extinction. One signal, one death, one scientist who chose to burn so others could live. Dr. Elias Thorne, astrophysicist, age 45, saved 4 billion lives. The command deck stood in absolute silence. Victory and grief tangled together until you couldn't separate one from the other. Kira stood at the central display, her hand pressed against the screen where Thorne's life signs had vanished. She stayed there for 10 seconds. 20. 30. Then she straightened, wiped her eyes, and became the Admiral again. "All ships status report. I want casualty counts within the hour. I want names. Every single name." The final tally came in over the next 60 minutes. 47,000 human personnel lost in the Vanguard engagement. Another 11,000 in the final assault. 58,000 total. 58,000 names. Kira read them all. Every single one. It took her 3 hours. 3 hours of standing at attention reading names aloud to an empty bridge. A ritual of remembrance, a promise that their sacrifice wouldn't be forgotten. I watched her through all of it, watched her voice grow hoarse, watched her touch her scar after every 100th name, watched her bear the weight of command with dignity and terrible grace. When she finished, when the last name had been spoken, she finally sat down in her command chair. That's when the transmission came from Chancellor Loomis. Admiral Volkov, the Council has voted. Unanimous decision. 2,959 in favor, 0 against, 0 abstaining. Humanity is granted full membership in the Galactic Council with immediate effect and full honors. The bridge crew waited for Kira's response. I saw hope in their faces. After everything, after the sacrifice, surely now they'd be welcomed, recognized, given the respect they'd earned in blood. Kira stood, walked to the viewport, stared out at the disabled harvester fleet, drifting like dead leaves in the void. Tell the Chancellor I'm honored by the Council's decision, and tell him we must respectfully decline. The shocked silence was absolute. Admiral, Loomis's voice cracked. I don't understand. You've proven yourselves beyond any doubt. Why would you refuse? Kira turned back to face the camera, and behind her I could see the memorial wall they'd erected on the command deck. 58,000 names arranged in columns that stretched across bulkheads, Elias Thorne's name carved at the center. Because this was a Vanguard Chancellor. The main harvester hive is still out there somewhere in the dark between galaxies. Someone needs to watch for them. Someone needs to stand guard while civilization sleeps safely. That's what Earth taught us. That's what my father taught me when I was 17 years old. She touched her scar. The strong protect the weak. Not for membership, not for recognition. Because it's right. Your galaxy is beautiful, Chancellor. Your civilization is everything we could hope to become someday. But right now, you need guardians more than you need members. So, we'll stay in the shadows, we'll watch. And when something else comes out of the dark, we'll be there to stop it. Loomis was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a respect I'd never heard him use before. The galaxy will never forget what you've done, Admiral Volkov. Don't forget the names, Chancellor. 58,000 humans who gave everything so others could live. Remember them. That's all we ask. The transmission ended. I approached her slowly, my skin cycling through colors I had no names for. Admiral, I need to ask, why did you come? Why petition for membership when you knew you'd refuse it? She smiled that sad, knowing smile. Someone had to be in position when the attack came. We needed to be inside your defensive perimeter, close enough to help. The membership application was just an excuse to get here. Everything else, she gestured to the memorial wall. Everything else was the mission. You planned to save us all along. From the moment we detected them 72 hours ago, from the moment 25 years ago when your council laughed at my warnings, from 35 years ago when I watched my father die because help didn't come in time. Yes, Ambassador, we planned to save you because that's what humans do. The fleet began repositioning, moving back toward the galactic rim, back to the darkness they'd emerged from, back to their vigil. I stayed aboard the Sentinel as long as I could, watching Kira coordinate the departure, watching her check on injured crew members, watching her stand before the memorial wall and speak quietly to names carved in metal. When I finally had to leave, when my shuttle was waiting to take me back to Council space, she walked me to the airlock personally. Ambassador Calvex, she said, extending her hand in the human gesture of farewell. It's been an honor. I took her hand in two of mine, my skin showing every color of respect, gratitude, and profound sorrow. Admiral Volkov, I voted against you. I was wrong about everything. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, Ambassador. Be better. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that death worlds don't make monsters. They make guardians. And tell them that somewhere out in the dark, humans are still watching. My shuttle departed. As we pulled away from the Sentinel, I watched the human fleet take formation at the galactic rim. 50 capital ships, battered and scarred, each one now a tomb for thousands who didn't come home. And from each ship, fighters deployed in perfect precision, spreading across the boundary between the galaxy and the infinite void beyond. Standing watch, keeping vigil, protecting those who sleep safely because someone else refused to. I'm Theron Calvex, fourth-hand ambassador of the Galactic Council. I voted against humanity. I was wrong. But here's what I learned watching Admiral Kira Volkov Death Worlds don't make monsters. They make people who understand the weight of protection, who know that strength without purpose is meaningless, who choose every single day to stand between darkness and those who can't stand for themselves. Admiral Kira Volkov lost her father at 17, lost 58,000 under her command at 52. She came to us knowing we'd reject her, knowing she'd fight for us anyway, knowing some of her people would die, knowing that being right doesn't matter if everyone's dead. She taught this galaxy what true strength means, not the strength to conquer, not the strength to dominate, the strength to carry the weight of loss and choose to protect anyway. The strong protect the weak, not for glory, not for reward, not for membership in councils or recognition from civilizations, because it's right, because someone has to, because somewhere a 17-year-old girl watched her father die and learned that waiting for permission to help people gets them killed. Admiral Kira Volkov and her fleet saved 4 billion lives, and when we offered them everything we could give, they asked only that we remember the names of those who didn't come home. That's what humans are. That's what we rejected. And that's what stands guard tonight, watching the darkness so we can sleep safely. I will never forget, and neither should you.